In my continual analysis of the sexual understanding of the Torah, I've come across the fundamental aspects of this understanding, and that's the cherubs, the cherubim, that stand actually in two places at the beginning, at the east of the Garden of Eden, to protect the way to the tree of life. And also they stand on the ark. They're engraved in the ark with wings above. And Hashem speaks between, and is found between these two wings, speaking to Moses. For me, the cherubim, well, what I'm going to start to express is the cherubim as LGBTQ plus. LGBTQ plus. In other words, the sexuality of the cherubim. Nobody knows what these cherubim look like. They say they were mirror images of each other. Yet they're expressed as male and female. Nobody knows if they were old and young. They call them childs. I'm going to do this a little poetically here, in a free flow. They call them children, the face of children, yet sometimes they had the face of an old person. They were mirror images. They were almost like twins. There are three forms that they could take. They could take parallel structures of Abba and Ima, of Chokmah and Bina. They could take Zir Anpin and Nekuva. These are why they're male and female. They could also take Netzach and Hod with Yesod in between, which is the flaming sword in the Garden of Eden and the speaking of Hashem in the temple. These levels of not misunderstanding, but of identity of these cherubim, what they look like. What are they? Cherubim is the sexual essence, which is expressed mainly by Netzach and Hod as like the two testicles, so to speak, or the ovaries, or whatever. And these parallelisms express themselves in different ways, in different levels of understanding, not much different than LGBTQ plus. And never forget the plus, because the whole thing is the plus. In Lacanian thought, that's the petite object A. Never forget the plus, because that's the undefined, the unexplicable, the thing that's searched for and never found. So they can give you 32 definitions of what you are: two spirits, asexual, added to that common usage of LGBTQ plus. But it's never defined. And it's usually defined in opposites as to sexual roles. In other words, it's lesbian and gay. Lesbian is from a woman, and then gay is from a man. But quite frankly, I don't see it. What I've been seeing recently is that when I see women, I actually see men with makeup. You know? A lot of spending time on makeup around the eyes and around the mouth. And so it's a man with makeup. There are whole sorts of different structures these days. Even in the transsexual world, a person can be a transsexual without having the operation. The decathlete, I forget his name right now. He became a transsexual, and now I found out after a while he was talking about how being a woman was so pleasant for him or something. You know, he didn't have the final operation. So now things go from 0 to 100. I don't see a differentiation in male and female. And I see this as what the cherubim represent. Because now, with the way medical and science is, a woman can have a child without a man's input. So she becomes a father to her own child. This is also expressed in the concept of Yesod itself, because Yesod without a Malkus, this is the way Arik Anpin is. Arik Anpin has no Malkus. It just has Yesod. It kind of reproduces itself. Almost it then rises back up. The energy rises back up like a Kundalini energy. And doesn't go out into a Malkus. And it creates its own energy, creates its own development. And so the sexual roles and understandings are obviously changing. When these roles are changing, that's why we should look to these cherubim. Very interesting, cherubim are written in plural defectively. It's defective, it's without the vav. It's without the vav. So cherubim is written without the vav, but the singular cherub is written with the vav. Kuf resh vav bet, cherub. But cherubim is written kuf resh bet yud mem. Cherubim, in that way, with a final mem of 600, spells 832. 832 is Eretz Yisrael. These two cherubim represent Eretz Yisrael. And I tell you that these two cherubim are one sex, divided into two. And the commentators, because they're 5,000 years old, have brought them down as male and female, but there's only one unisex. And it's split into two for functional apparatus, for pleasure, so to speak. Because in a certain sense, you get more pleasure from another. Or the real masturbatory concept is that you get pleasure from yourself. You get pleasure from yourself as the other. And in a certain sense, that's what the whole idea of the hands are. These cherubim, again, cherub, spelt kuf resh vav bet, is 228. And those same letters are in Baruch. So every time you say Baruch, that's a cherub. And if you add 4 to that, it's 232, which are the 4 names of Yud Kei Vav Kei, as 72, 63, 45, and 52. And in the cherubim, if you have it's spelt out at 832, you have 232 plus a final mem. You have 232, which are the 4 names spelt out, plus a final mem, around it, which is 600, and that makes a nice unit, which we've talked about before, but not with the cherubim. These 39 letters that are spelt out in the 232 name of Cherub is 39 aspects of Shabbos, and the 40th aspect of Shabbos is the intercourse, which is shown in the final mem, because that's the Malkus that surrounds. This is a little wordy, but if you've seen my videos, then you may know this. And this final intercourse is the whole idea of the cherubim. And the whole idea, let me not lose this track of thought here. The analysis from now on of the cherubim will be under the auspices of LGBTQ+. We are due for a new understanding of our own sexuality from this sexual world of LGBTQ+. Or are you so sure about your sexuality? And I can tell you that whenever you're defined, you're going to be defined, so to speak, in a binary manner. And this binary manner comes from the bet of the Bereshis. But there's a transcendence of this binary matter into the Aleph, and then into the zero. And so in a certain sense, the Aleph is one, and then to a zero. And in a certain sense, that's why these two, the combination of lesbian and gay into one, leaves still a plus. And this petite object A, which has always been thought to be like a minute thing, and object A is like an Aleph. No, it's a zero. And it comes from Ein Sof. Yesod, by the way, has a direct relationship to Ein Sof. Ein Sof's functioning power in our worlds come through Yesod. Yesod has this great number when it's completely spelled out of 586, which is the same as Yerushalayim, same as Shofar. This goes so well with the whole concept of Eretz Yisrael. Yesod is the middle part. This Yerushalayim is the center of the two Netzach and Hod, if you take them as the Cherubim. Yerushalayim is the center of Eretz Yisrael. So Yesod is between the Cherubim as Netzach and Hod. And these are the mirror images. The groin. And where Yesod lives. So getting an understanding of these cherubim and your own sexuality and how to develop into sexuality and how tunis and split aspects. And does this mean polyamorous? Can the true expression be with one female or male? Since I'm two parts, I have a behemoth below my waist, and a kedusha, a godly soul above it. It's like a mermaid. To recognize this animal soul, and to recognize the godly soul, and that's what the relationship is in these two cherubim. They bring it down as Yud Kei, Vav Kei, and Elohim. And they parallel each other because, as we say in Yom HaKippurim, which is the day of this merging in the Holy of Holies, where the two cherubim and their wings and things happen there. Adonai hu ha-Elohim. They're the same. Adonai hu ha-Elohim. So this male and female are one. They don't become one, they are one. They took two separate ways. But the male, it's the same thing that's brought down that I'm a merging of my mother and father. So I have like aspects that look like male. But my female has to be someplace. Or do you think that my mother was erased? No, this is brought down. In true sexuality, you lose the idea of gender. Of course. You lose the idea of sex. You get into what I call a yesod mamash. I did a beautiful gematria of that. Of a yesod mamash. Came out to be 1,106 plus 7 letters plus 2 words plus 1 is 1,116. That's Keter Malkus. It's also my brother's name, Shimon. A Yesod Mamash has its own Malkus within it. It's hidden within it. It's its plus. It's its zero. Cherubim comes out to be with Cherubim, that's why there's no Vav, comes out to be 1,112 plus 5 letters of the original letters as 1,117, which is why, by the way, the conversation of the two Cherubim is considered Shir HaSharim. Because remember the Shir, and so therefore it's also a parallel to the Pesach Haggadah and the Shir HaSharim after Pesach. The 1,117 is my symbol of the Hey and the Aleph, and the first word of Ha. Aleph is 1,000 and Hey as itself fully Hey Aleph 117. So that becomes that. Plus 1 is the Shema itself, 1,118. That's the gematria of the first line of the Shema. So, God is speaking from between the cherubim's wings. Between Netzach and Hod. Where prophecy comes from, Netzach and Hod. Testicles, so to speak. And so he's speaking from Yesod. Hashem speaking from Yesod. This is the flaming sword. Goes opposite ways. And that's the idea of two-ness that has to be overcome to oneness, but to find the zero, which is the Ein Sof to begin with. So these are just beginnings of an introduction of the cherubim, who are represented today by the LGBTQ plus community. And so this is an entree for one's own self to look at oneself in this manner and to see what these cherubim really are. And as I like to say, we'll go from here.